Hello everyone, this is Chris. Thought I'd do another video on a Varney Docksider. This one I got in the middle of April. I got it on eBay. I got this one for $12. It's the old one with a die-cast shell. Paid $8 shipping, and I thought that was a really good deal for this. The only trouble, this one back step is bent, but I figured I'm not going to try to straighten it, but I could just, at least it's still there. It is pretty dirty. It's got a lot of dust inside and grease that's hardened up over the years. I did try to test run it, and it just barely wanted to start. I couldn't get it to really move very far, but I think it will run. A lot of trouble with these is the pickup for the power is actually, it's coiled around that stud there, and one wire is supposed to touch the outer rim of the wheel, and the other wire is supposed to come down and touch this one. So that's the only positive, I guess if you want to call it positive pickup for this engine. And this side here is be that, of course, just through the axle to the frame. But you can tell this is a Varney because it has a V right there. All these were number 98. The earliest ones, like I said, are the cast shell here, like this one. Eventually they went to a plastic shell. This one I'm going to clean it all up and show you. Show you what it looks like before and after. This one doesn't have any special rods on the side. They did make kits where you could add the side rods. Varney made them, and Central Valley, and possibly a few others. But let me go ahead and take this shell off and I'll show you the inside. Alright, I loosened the screw. There's only one screw in the front. Actually threads up into the smokestack. This long screw. And it also holds on the steam chest. So in the back it has two little prongs that hold it in the back there. You can slide them out. And this one has some added weight to it. I guess, yeah, it's moved. It's actually held up in there through the smokestack. I think somebody, I don't know if they made that or not. Somebody probably put that weight in there. But you have to hold this, the motor. The motor's missing a screw in the middle here. And that's supposed to adjust the height of the motor so the mesh of the worm gear is the proper setting, so it's not too deep or too high. And then this back screw here actually holds the motor tight, pulls it down. And this steam chest just comes right off, and you can pull out the piston guide rods. And they have extra holes, one at the top and bottom, where you could put the guides for the piston rod if you're going to add the valve gearing. Let me turn it around. This side is where the electrical pickup on the outside of the wheels is. And a lot of times, that's either, this one's got some solder on it. Some of them don't have solder, and it's just relying on a mechanical connection here. It's usually looped around 2 times. And that's probably why this one wasn't running, because this wasn't touching the wheel properly. So I'll have to make a new one, and it should touch both wheels. And they have, this goes to the one brush, and then the other brush is to the ground. But well, as you can see, I've got it all apart. I was going to show you more detail, but my battery went dead. Last night I was working on it, so I just kept working on it last night while my phone charged. As you can see, I've polished up the frame. Some of the old paint, I got it off, and you can see a Katy coupler I mounted. It took a while to get. I've never done one in the front, but I modified just the number 5. All I used was the metal spring like you see there, and a number 5 coupler, and then I cut the little plate that has the round holder on it. This one right here holds the center of the Katy coupler. Cut that down, and that's what's the black plastic inside there is that piece with a round circle. So tried to make sure the centering spring would still work, and it seems to. Every once in a while it doesn't, but you can see it looks pretty nice, cleaned up. That's where the axles go. I'm not finished cleaning up yet, but I'll show you what I've done so far. The wheels, they were all coated in that grease. Cleaned out all the spokes, polished up the drive rods, polished the piston rod, cleaned the gear out. So one thing you want to know when you put it back together is which side is the positive pickup. It would be the one with the little black line, which would be this side here. That's the insulation in between the tire and the spokes. You can see it there. Of course, you can always test with a meter. If this outer rim doesn't contact to the axle, then that's the positive. And that'll be what goes against this. This is the part I was showing you that wasn't making contact. This goes around there, and I'm going to solder it on. But when I was working on it, the old mounting isolation plate broke, and you can see that right back here, this piece here. And I made a new one out of some material I got from McMaster-Carr. It says it's insulating fiberboard. I tried to get the same thickness, which I think it was, I don't know if it was 0.03 inches. But this piece was wrapped around twice. I uncoiled it, so it's only wrapped around once, and it looks to be long enough now to use to touch both wheels. And this is an interesting motor. I haven't seen one of these. I don't know if it is a Varney motor or not, but this piece goes on top, and then this is their springs that spring on both sides. There's a spring in the center with 2 tabs that push out on these. I'll show you when I get it back together, but I thought that was pretty interesting to have that. And I cleaned the shell up a little bit. I think I'm going to polish it off some more and clean up some of the loose paint. And the weight definitely was a homemade. You can see somebody must have poured it somehow. I don't know if they poured it right into the boiler shell, I guess. And this motor is only a 3-pole, so I'm not sure how. Hopefully it runs all right. This motor comes right apart. You can turn this and pull the motor right out. Of course, everything comes apart. These two halves come right off. They're held just by magnetism right now. And you can see there's a wick where you can put your oil to keep the bearing lubricated, or the bushing. I cleaned up the armature. So I'm going to work on a rear coupler also. I'm not sure yet how I'm going to do it. Well, let me work on it a little bit more and I'll be back to show you. Well, I've got the motor back together. It took me a while to get it all sorted out. Had a few things that were broken. Yeah, this wire, the original wire, broke off of this tab, so I had to solder that back on. I opened it back up so I could put the end of the wire under a tab at the end, and this tab here holds the insulation, and this goes down to the wheels where the pickup is. Had to clean these little brush spring holders, or the brush spring holder out. You can see how that spring is going. One spring in the middle pushes out on both tabs, so they both have equal tension. Had to resolder. I didn't have to resolder that. I had to resolder this side. This side didn't look so good, so I did solder that. Cleaned all the screws. Cleaned out, of course, inside where the spring goes. In between this and the motor frame is a little fiber insulator right there, where I cleaned up that screw. Of course, you can see on this one, this is where the bearing is. Has the I guess pad that soaks up the oil. But if you want to oil this one, you really have to stick your tip of your oiler up in there to get that pad oiled. You don't just want to oil the shaft, you want to get oil down in there. I did clean these plates up, make sure they made good contact. I don't know if that's how the motor gets its ground. Seems I tested it. There's no shorts and it's running pretty well. Of course, it is only a 3-pole, so it's not going to start as smooth. But it'll run on only like 1 volt and 1 amp, and it'll stay running. So the next thing, I guess, will be to work on getting this put back on, and I'll show you that. I did make, like I said, this new fiber plate, but when this wire broke off, I disassembled it. I'll show you how. Well, I had to drill and tap this part. That's where the wire wraps around. So I put a little screw that's going to hold this wire on. I'll show you that in a minute. Alright, now I've got the pickup attached to the new isolation tab. You can see the head of the screw there where I tapped it. I just made one loop around with the wire, and then I put a little bit of a solder at the top here so that, you know, when you mount it to the side of the engine, the 2 wheels will be here and they'll be able to pick up the power. So the next thing, I'll work on putting the wheels back in the frame, and then mounting this and the motor in the frame. So I'll work on that and show you. Well, before I put this cover back on, I like to oil the axle, in the middle a couple of times. Not that it couldn't go in from the sides, but I just like to do that using synthetic oil. Like you always say, you don't need too much, which I got a little too much, but when you try to do it for the camera, it never works right. But if I get a little bit too much, I'll just take a Q-tip and wipe off any excess. And you can also look on the back of this. You can see 4 little tabs that hold the axles. They keep them from moving or slop in the gearing. See, there's the little hole where this will go. So that'll go down right there. You gotta adjust the wires a little, bend them around, make them a little tighter. So I'll work on that and show you how that looks. Well, I've been adjusting the wire pickup. I tried to shape it similar to the wheels, give it a round shape, but you really want to have the tension before you install this. So if you have it adjusted properly, when you put it into position, you can see that each wire is being sprung back a little. So once I put the screw in there, it'll hold it. I don't know if you can tell in the video if there's tension on it, but there is. So I'll put that on and maybe get the rest of it completed, and I'll show you. Hopefully see it run soon. Well, I got it all back together. I've actually worked on it about 3 hours since I showed you the last part of it. I thought it would be simple from that point on, but I had a lot of problems with some binding with the wheels or the axles and the motor shaft, and had a problem with the motor. The top, I guess the plate underneath where the brushes are, that broke, and one of the brushes broke off. So I had to make a new fiber plate for that, just like I did on the side for the pickup. And it was pretty intricate making that little piece and getting it all lined up properly. And what I did was file those tabs off on the bottom plate where the axles are held, because that, like I said, was binding, and I kept filing and putting it together, filing, put it together, and still has a little bit of a bind. I think with the drive rod it hesitates a little bit, but maybe I'll eventually get that worked out. But I didn't want to make this video too long. I'll show you it running now. And one other thing I do want to do to it is strip the paint off the shell. I saw a video about using some dish soap. That was something I'd never thought of that might work. I thought about using some kind of stripper, but I'm gonna try this dish soap and water, soak it in there for a day or so, maybe less. But let me show you it running, and if I do get it painted, I'll show you that in another video. Let's see. I only have the front coupler, so I'm going to hook up to a 2 passenger cars I have on the track. If I go much slower than that, it'll bind up. I think like it's bound up a little bit now. Let me try it again. This has both gears are metal, so there's a little bit of a whining noise from the gears, but it doesn't run too bad. Another thing I tried with the motor, I thought the amp draw was a little bit high, so the spring that pushes on the brushes, I tried making a little less tension on the brushes, and that actually made the amp draw a little less. That friction on those brushes, you know, with too much pressure, actually, I guess, creates more amp draw. Let me bring it back this way. Guess you can hear those gears. Later on they made plastic gears. You see how it hesitates? But that's the drive rods, I think. But I'll work on it later, and if I get a paint job and get it running a little better, I'm going to show you that. But that's all for this video. Thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed it and learned something. It's always fun working on these engines. Sometimes it's frustrating when you have all those problems, but when you get it working, it makes you feel good. So I'm going to work on a few other engines and upload the video hopefully in another week or two. Thanks.